The Nigma Empire had conquered 100 worlds without resistance. Their genetic superiority, advanced weaponry, and disciplined military made them an unstoppable force in the galaxy. When their scouts discovered humanity, a young, scattered species with primitive technology, the Nigma High Council dismissed them as insignificant. They sent a message to Earth: surrender your colonies. Submit to Nigma rule. You will be spared. Humanity responded with a single transmission: come and take them. Now, Commander Viacor stood on the bridge of his warship, staring at the Hell's Gate below. Kessin 4, once a thriving human colony, had turned into a death trap. The invasion was supposed to be routine. Instead, it had become a massacre. His fleet had entered orbit unchallenged, dropping ground troops in overwhelming numbers. Yet the moment they landed, everything had gone wrong. The first sign was the silence. The cities were empty. Human settlements had been abandoned, their power grids still running, their supplies untouched. VA Corps' tactical officers assured him it was a sign of surrender, that the humans had fled into the forests to await capture. Then his soldiers started disappearing. It began with a single squad, 12 Nigma warriors, highly trained, fully armored, vanished without a sound. A search party found their bodies strung up from streetlights, their armor torn open, their weapons gone. Then another squad vanished. Then another. Now, 3 hours into the invasion, the casualty reports outnumber the victories. A transmission came through. It was distorted, but the words were unmistakable. We warned you. Now you disappear. VA Corps' second-in-command, Subcommander Garish, stepped forward, his face drawn. Commander, we have incoming reports from the Northern District. Another unit has gone dark. VA Corps clenched his jaw. Are there survivors? Garish hesitated. There were. For a moment, a cold unease settled in VA Corps' gut. Explain. Garish swallowed. They sent a distress call. They were pinned down in a market square, requesting immediate extraction. But before we could deploy air support, the transmission changed. He activated the console, playing the final words of the fallen squad. At first, it was gunfire, controlled, disciplined. The squad was fighting back. Then screams. And then laughter. Human laughter. Not the panicked, desperate kind of a losing battle. No, this was something else. Low, amused, cruel. Then silence. VA Corps slammed his fist on the console. Enough of this. Deploy the shock troops. Burn this city down if you have to. I want every human exterminated by nightfall. Garish hesitated again. Sir. What? VA Corps growled. The humans. Garish's voice dropped to a whisper. They're hunting us. VA Corps stared at him. Absurd. Garish's face was pale. Sir, we were wrong. The humans didn't abandon the colony. They let us land. They let us spread out. They let us think we had control. He exhaled shakily. And now, they're taking us apart, one by one. VA Corps turned back to the viewport, staring at the ruined city below. It was true, wasn't it? His fleet was intact. His war machines were fully operational. Yet, he was losing. A new alert flashed across the screen. Another battalion had gone silent. No distress calls. No warnings. Vanished. He gritted his teeth. If they wish to play shadows, we will burn them out. He activated his comms. All units, advance. Deploy flamethrowers. Flush them from their holes. The orders went out. The city burned. Buildings collapsed under the force of plasma bombardments. The streets were engulfed in firestorms. For a moment, it seemed to be working. Human positions were revealed as they fled the encroaching flames. Nigma forces surged forward, cutting them down. Then the traps activated. Roads collapsed, swallowing Nigma tanks into underground caverns where waiting human ambush teams finished them off. The fires drove the Nigma exactly where the humans wanted them. And then the real slaughter began. From the smoke, figures emerged. Not soldiers, not warriors, but predators. Humans moved like ghosts, clad in adaptive camouflage that blurred their shapes. They struck with ruthless precision, blades sliding between armor plates, bullets finding weak points, hands crushing throats before bodies hit the ground. The Nigma were genetically engineered for war. Their muscle density was twice that of a human's. Their reflexes were faster. Their endurance unmatched. None of it mattered, because humans didn't fight wars. They ended them. Sergeant Anika Rains moved through the flames, her team of operatives flowing like wraiths through the chaos. She drove a knife into a Nigma officer's neck, silencing his scream before he could alert his squad. "Captain," she whispered into her calm. Captain Elias Ward's voice came through. "Go ahead." They took the bait. "The main force is in the kill zone. Proceed." Rains nodded to her team. They vanished into the smoke. The Nigma, oblivious to the trap, pressed forward, right into the crossfire. The human counterattack was swift, brutal, and overwhelming. Explosions erupted as hidden charges tore through Nigma ranks. Sniper fire rained down from unseen positions, each shot precise, each bullet finding flesh. A Nigma officer screamed as his body was dragged into the shadows. Another turned just in time to see a knife coming for his throat. VA Corps watched in horror as his army crumbled before his eyes. This wasn't war. It was annihilation. The Nigma Empire had conquered 100 worlds, but they had never faced humans. VA Corps opened a secure channel to the flagship. "Give me General Threxkull." The general's face appeared, impatience evident. "Commander, I expect a victory report." VA Corps' hands trembled. He forced himself to stand tall. "Sir, we have underestimated the humans." Threxkull scoffed. "They are nothing more than primitives." "No," VA Corps whispered, watching his forces fall. "They are something else." A new transmission cut through their signal. "Human." Captain Ward's voice was calm, unshaken. "You were warned." Then the Nigma flagship's shield shut down, and the orbital bombardment began. Panic spread through the Nigma ranks like a virus. The disciplined formations that had crushed civilizations before now dissolved into chaos. Command channels overflowed with desperate reports. Troops cut off, entire units vanishing into the ruins. Officers found dead with their own weapons jammed into their throats. VA Corps forced himself to remain composed, but the truth gnawed at his mind. He had never seen warfare like this. Humans were not merely fighting back. They were dismantling his invasion piece by piece. His forces were technologically superior, numerically dominant, yet they were being outmaneuvered at every turn. The main human resistance had been expected to crumble under an overwhelming assault. Instead, they had drawn the Nigma into a kill box. Garish approached, his movements stiff with barely concealed fear. "Commander, the flagship's shield were compromised through cyber warfare. We believe the humans infiltrated our systems." "Impossible," VA Corps snapped, though he knew it wasn't. "Our encryption is beyond their comprehension." Garish swallowed. It was. Until now. He hesitated before continuing. "Sir, I believe they were prepared for us. They knew we would come." VA Corps' mind reeled at the implications. A species this young, this primitive, shouldn't have been capable of predicting the might of the Nigma Empire. And yet, the evidence was undeniable. Then another thought struck him, colder than the void of space. They hadn't predicted the invasion. They had baited it. The sound of a distant explosion made VA Corps snap his attention to the cityscape beyond. In the distance, columns of smoke twisted into the darkened sky. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were destroying everything: supply caches, transport hubs, communication relays. The Nigma weren't losing a battle. They were being systematically erased. On the ground, Anika Rains moved through the crumbling remains of a Nigma outpost. The operation had gone exactly as planned. The enemy had been drawn into the fire, their arrogance leading them straight into the jaws of destruction. A squad of Nigma soldiers moved ahead, their helmets scanning for threats. They were elite, faster, stronger, built for combat. But it didn't matter. Rains and her team had learned how they moved, how they reacted. They weren't adaptable. Rains raised her suppressed rifle and fired 3 times. 3 precise shots. 3 Nigma fell. The rest turned, raising their weapons, but by the time they adjusted, her team had already flanked them. Knives flashed in the dim light, slicing through armor joints. 5 more down. No sound. The last Nigma tried to run. A wire tightened around his throat. A quick jerk. A silent death. Rains wiped her blade clean. Clear. Ward's voice crackled in her earpiece. Status. Enemy numbers are thinning, she replied, checking her ammo. They're still trying to fight in formation. They don't know how to handle this kind of war. Ward's tone was grim. They will soon. He was right. The Nigma were learning. Slowly, painfully. But they were adjusting. The next phase had to begin. From his command center, VA Corps gritted his teeth. The humans were dragging this into prolonged urban warfare, a situation that should have favored his forces, but instead had turned into a nightmare. The burning city provided perfect concealment for human ambushes, their tactics exploiting every blind spot in Nigma combat doctrine. But VA Corps was not without options. Order all remaining forces to converge, he commanded. We abandon sector dispersal. We form a single front and push through. Garish frowned. Commander, that would mean conceding. I know what it means. VA Corps snarled. The humans are winning because we are spread too thin. We will regroup, we will consolidate, and we will purge this infestation. He activated the planetary comms. His voice rang across every surviving Nigma unit. No more hiding. No more games. We march together. We will burn this world to its core. We will remind these creatures why the Nigma Empire has never been defeated. The remaining forces moved swiftly, falling into new formations. The moment of disorder had passed. Now, discipline took over. They wouldn't fight humans on their terms. They would crush them in one decisive sweep. Rains and her team watched from the shadows as Nigma forces reassembled, forming an unbroken front. Their cohesion had returned. She exhaled. This was expected. Planned for. She switched to the command frequency. They're forming up. Ward's voice was calm. Then it's time. The city rumbled. Explosions erupted along the Nigma front. Buildings collapsed onto their positions, firestorms engulfing entire squads. They had been led here for one reason: to die here. As the flames roared, Rains and her operatives opened fire. Snipers picked off officers. Charges detonated in pre-rigged pathways, splitting the formation into fragmented pockets. The Nigma pushed forward despite the carnage, their discipline refusing to break. But then the real horror began. From the tunnels, from the smoke, from the very ruins themselves, humans emerged. Not soldiers, not warriors, hunters. Some wore scavenged Nigma armor, their movements eerily perfect. Others carried weapons modified from enemy stockpiles. Every shot counted. Every kill was personal. The Nigma, for the first time, felt something unfamiliar. Fear. VA Corps' command channel filled with screams. His front lines were crumbling. He watched through surveillance drones as his best forces, were torn apart. The humans weren't fighting for territory. They were fighting for eradication. For the first time in his life, VA Corps understood the meaning of the word prey. He clenched his fists. We're pulling out. Garish gaped at him. Sir, we retreat, damn you. VA Corps roared. Get every remaining soldier back to the warships. We are leaving this cursed world. Even as he said it, he knew it was too late. The humans weren't going to let them leave. The battlefield was no longer a battlefield. It was a slaughterhouse. The Nigma forces, once an unstoppable tide of imperial conquest, had been reduced to scattered remnants desperately fighting for survival. Their grand formations had collapsed. Their mighty war machines lay smoldering in the ruins of a city that had become their grave. VA Corps stood atop a fractured sky bridge, his crimson armor smeared with ash and the blood of his own kind. He watched in horror as his warriors, his once mighty legions, were hunted like animals. They had come to dominate. Now they ran. Garish stumbled toward him, his breathing ragged. "Commander, it's over. We have to surrender." VA Corps struck him across the face, sending him sprawling onto the cracked pavement. "We do not surrender. We are Nigma. We are." A bullet shattered the air, striking the bridge mere inches from his feet. He spun, searching the ruins, but saw nothing. The humans were ghosts. Shadows. He had no idea where the shot had come from, and that terrified him more than anything. Below, the last surviving Nigma forces scrambled toward the extraction points. Dropships hovered above, their engines screaming against the storm of firepower that rained down from every direction. Human missiles streaked through the sky, turning fleeing ships into blazing wrecks before they could breach the atmosphere. There was no escape. Rains moved like a phantom through the wreckage. Her rifle kicked against her shoulder as she dropped another Nigma officer, trying to rally his troops. The alien crumpled, his mouth opening in a silent scream as he hit the ground. She didn't stop to watch him die. Her team was in perfect sync. Ward's voice was a steady anchor in her earpiece, directing their strikes with surgical precision. They had planned for this, anticipated every desperate maneuver the Nigma would make. The enemy thought they were making a final push for survival. In reality, they were being herded. Rain slung her rifle and reached for a detonator strapped to her belt. The Nigma had assumed the bridges were safe, their final paths to salvation. They hadn't realized those bridges had been wired from the moment they set foot on this planet. She pressed the trigger. The shockwave ripped through the city as the sky bridges collapsed, sending entire squads of Nigma plummeting into the inferno below. The screams of dying soldiers echoed through the ruins, drowning in the roar of crumbling metal and stone. VA Corps barely managed to leap onto a stable ledge as the bridge beneath him disintegrated. His armor's servos whined in protest, barely keeping him upright as he landed hard. He gasped for breath, his mind racing. This was annihilation. He tapped his communicator with shaking fingers. "This is Commander VA Corps. Emergency override, priority Alpha. Bring the dreadnoughts into orbital bombardment position. Wipe this city from existence." The comms crackled. The reply was hollow, weak. "Sir, the dreadnoughts are gone." The words barely registered. "What?" "The humans, they got aboard. Sabotaged the reactors. Every ship in high orbit destroyed." VA Corps staggered, his vision tunneling. He had expected a difficult battle. He had prepared for losses. But this was extinction. He turned his gaze skyward, expecting to see his fleet, the unbreakable armada of the Nigma Empire. Instead, he saw only fire. Rains and her team advanced through the rubble, picking off the last pockets of resistance. The enemy's discipline had fractured completely. Some fought to the bitter end, but most simply tried to run. It didn't matter. None of them were getting out alive. She spotted a wounded Nigma warrior, dragging himself toward a weapon. Without breaking stride, she drew her sidearm and fired. The alien's body jerked once before going still. Ward's voice crackled through her earpiece. "Status. Final phase," she responded, stepping over the corpse. "It's almost done." Ward exhaled. "Good. Make sure it stays that way." She knew what that meant. No prisoners. No survivors. This wasn't just war. It was erasure. VA Corps ran, ignoring the burning in his legs. His once proud command center was nothing but a smoldering husk. But he knew there was still one chance. One single chance. A stealth craft, hidden deep in the lower ruins, untouched by the bombardment. If he could reach it, If he could make it off this cursed world, he could warn the Empire. They needed to know. The humans weren't just fighting back. They were destroying them. He stumbled through the crumbling streets, the sounds of battle fading into the distance. Smoke choked the air, turning the sky into a black void. Somewhere in the ruins, a human laughter echoed. Cold, unforgiving. VA Core clenched his jaw and forced himself forward. He could still make it. He could still. A shadow moved. He stopped, every instinct screaming at him. His hand went to his sidearm. Too slow. A blade pierced through his lower back, severing his spine in one swift motion. The pain was white-hot, then vanished as his body collapsed beneath him. He hit the ground, unable to move, his vision swimming. Footsteps approached, slow and deliberate. Through the haze of agony, he saw her. Rains knelt beside him, wiping her knife clean. Her face was unreadable, her eyes colder than deep space. She studied him for a moment. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she spoke. "We warned you." VA Core tried to speak, to beg, to do something. But nothing came. His body refused to obey him. Rain stood. She gave a small nod to her team. The last remaining Nigma dropships exploded in the sky, their wreckage falling like dying embers. The enemy was gone. The battle was over. And soon, so would be the Nigma Empire. Smoke curled into the air, thick and acrid, carrying the stench of burning metal and flesh. The battlefield had fallen silent, save for the occasional crack of collapsing structures and the distant howls of dying winds through ruined towers. The once mighty Nigma Empire, feared across the stars, had been reduced to nothing more than scattered embers fading into the void. Rain stood at the center of it all, her rifle resting against her shoulder as she surveyed the destruction. The enemy had been broken. There would be no reinforcements, no counterattack, no empire to rise from the ashes. The war was over. Ward's voice crackled in her earpiece. Final confirmation. She exhaled, glancing down at the lifeless body of Commander Vicor. His vacant eyes still held the last remnants of disbelief, frozen in time, as if his mind had never truly processed what had happened. She pressed a boot against his chest, shoving his corpse aside as she tapped her communicator. Objective complete. The Nigma Empire is gone. There was a long silence on the other end. Then Ward spoke again. Understood. Get your team back, to extraction. We're finishing the last phase now. Rains nodded, though Ward couldn't see it. Copy that. She turned to her team. There were no cheers of victory, no celebrations. Just cold efficiency as they moved through the rubble, confirming kills, ensuring that no Nigma soldier had managed to crawl away unnoticed. This wasn't about vengeance or pride. It was about certainty. They made sure. By the time they reached the evac zone, the final phase of the operation had begun. High above, human ships positioned themselves over the remains of the Nigma capital world. Massive payloads of kinetic bombardment ordnance were primed and waiting. The planet itself had been cracked, its once magnificent cities now nothing more than skeletal remains. But destruction wasn't enough. The humans had no intention of leaving any trace behind. Rains watched as the first payloads were released. The sky split open with brilliant streaks of light as the weapons hurtled toward the surface. They struck with the force of dying stars, unleashing seismic shockwaves that shattered mountains and swallowed entire regions in firestorms. The ground split apart, magma pouring through jagged fractures as the planet itself began to tear under the onslaught. Ward's voice came through once more, calm and certain. There won't be anything left in 12 hours. Not even dust. Rains closed her eyes for a moment, then exhaled. Good. As she boarded the transport, she cast one final glance at the dying world below. They had warned the Nigma Empire not to test humanity, not to mistake their patience for weakness, not to believe, even for a second, that they could win. Now, the Nigma no longer existed.